You must learn to know yourself and love yourself. Knowing yourself must be the first step. When you begin to know yourself better, first will come freedom from guilt, and second you will gain self-respect. After that will come the stage of self-like, then self-admiration, and finally self-love in the way it was meant to be. To know oneself physically. Where the physical body fits into all this is in the ability to enable the mind to work better, thus the experimental nutritional Garden of Eden. Those in the higher planes knew from the beginning of their experiment on planet Earth that the nourishment of the physical forms that the souls entered would determine the growth and thinking capacity of the human brain. The human brain was what the soul would infiltrate then to carry on with the experiential life on the Earth plane. Therefore, nutrition and exercise are of the utmost importance. The condition of the physical body will aid the brain in thinking, which can then push for further thought and nutrition, which will then influence the person to eat more wisely and thus increase their thinking. When the quality of food and the quantity of nutrition is increased, the brain will function better, and this will allow the soul to gain a stronghold, which can then influence the spiritual thoughts, which will then work to control the emotions, which will then help the physical body to quit eating for comfort, and the cycle will start again. If this cycle could be instigated in all from an early age on, the growth of humans would be fantastic. To know oneself emotionally. To know oneself emotionally is something that most people do know. They know what tears at their heart and makes them feel like crying, or actually makes them cry. Most of the time they know what makes them angry, jealous, or resentful. Here again, the lower emotions are the easiest to pinpoint. They are, therefore, the easiest to work on to change. The changing of these will go hand in hand with the changing and expanding of spiritual concepts. The changing of all emotion will go hand in hand with the changing of guidelines to live one's life by. To know oneself mentally. Now, if the mental body does not have any interest in changing or even thinking about guidelines or spiritual concepts, then there is not much hope for growth in this person. The mind, the mental focus of a human, is a controller of his growth and progress in each lifetime. Therefore, this is the place where all growth must start, in the mental thought. It must focus on who you are, what you are doing, what you want to change, what you have outgrown, and so on and so forth. The mental knowingness is not quite so difficult to achieve, as most people know what interests them to think about and what challenges them to push their thoughts further and deeper. It is this pushing of thoughts further and deeper that will help you know yourself mentally. In my case, I know that I'm interested in scientific concepts, and it is by pushing them further and deeper that I'm able to bring forth the new technology that I do. Therefore, it is a concrete fact that I am scientifically minded. This is what it means to know yourself. Now, if you don't like who you find yourself out to be mentally, there is a possibility of changing. For instance, I changed from being totally interested in music to being interested in science. But the first interest is the basic building blocks of the second, as both will be for the third area of interest I will find someday. If people could realize this, then they would be able to accept changes that come in their life and look at where they are leading them. One must keep changing to allow the development of the primary goal to take place. If one gets stuck in the first area of interest, he will not progress much mentally. Change is the giver of life. Accept it, welcome it with enthusiasm, and you will then be able to live in joy. To know yourself spiritually. To know oneself spiritually, one must examine what guidelines they are living their life by and examine their conscience to determine if these guidelines are still viable for where they are in life at that time. Can a guideline be changed, thus allowing the consciousness to expand? If the guideline cannot be changed without bringing into play the brakes of the conscience, then this particular guideline is still very much ingrained in one's beingness. Therefore, the way to expand and grow is to work with tight concepts and guidelines given you as a child as to right and wrong actions, and see if you can loosen the effect on the conscience that new action causes. If it still causes the conscience to come into play, no matter how much you try to change, then this is a concept that is a spiritual truth for you, and you will live your life by it and carry it over into your next. One should test out all the guidelines they are living by to be absolutely sure they are right and true and unchangeable for them. The real you. This then forms the real you as far as your spiritual self goes. The search for the God within remains ever the same. It does not change with each new generation. It is the age-old path of wisdom that remains forever. The search for the individual does begin with the conscience, which gets right down to a look at their attitudes towards those they're associated with in their everyday life. Also, their overview attitudes, which will in turn affect their attitude towards individuals. If one has an attitude against a certain race or religion as a whole, this will immediately color this person's attitude when they meet an individual of this race or religion. 7 unwanted attitudes compared to familiar things. Number 1, judging others compared to riding a bicycle. Before you try to pass anyone, pass judgment. Be sure your vehicle, your bike, is under perfect control. It must be balanced exactly and pointed straight down the path. It must be in as good a shape as possible. No flat tires or broken chains. And the form setting the vehicle in motion must do a good job operating the vehicle. If you have a hill to climb in front of you, you best be sure you can make the climb yourself. And if your companion needs help, try to help. But don't tell him he can't make it because his bike is old or because he is too weak. Try to encourage him to do his best. And if he is struggling up that hill and getting tired, reach out a hand to help. Number 2, manipulation compared to an artificial hand. An artificial hand can manipulate things in a way a normal hand cannot, but it takes more conscious thought and effort to do so, more than the normal hand does. Everything comes naturally to the normal hand, but has to be carefully thought about and planned out by the controlling factor of the artificial hand. Perhaps it can accomplish more intricate acts than the normal hand, but it leaves whomever it touches with a queasy feeling, a feeling of coldness and uncaring, a feeling of artificiality. Number 3, narrowness of mind compared to store ice cream. Store-bought ice cream tastes good, but isn't good for us. It has a lot of artificial things in it and preservatives to keep it fresh so it will last longer. It makes some people hyperactive. It is cold and refreshing, but leaves you thirsty afterwards. You long for something to drink to take the aftertaste out of your mouth. It's expensive and won't last when exposed to warmth. It melts down and becomes an ugly, sticky puddle. When eaten, it is not good for you because of the chemicals that eat away at your insides. It poisons your body. Number 4, prejudice compared to carrots. Some carrots are old and wrinkled, others smooth and slim. Some are bright orange, and others discolored with brown spots. But they all grew from seeds planted in the ground. Some put down deep roots with not much on top. Others grew bushier on top, but didn't penetrate too far in the ground. But think of the rabbit. Does he care? He loves them all, any size, shape, color, or age. Be like that rabbit. Everyone is just as delicious as the others in the bunch. Number 5, pride compared to a big hole in the middle of the road. It is a big blemish on something that should be whole and perfect. You can't get around the hole, and there's no use laying boards over it as a temporary measure. It must be corrected from the depths of the hole and rebuilt upward towards the surface, so it is solid and will never cave in again. Number 6, resentment compared to cherries hanging on a tree. They all came from the same tree trunk and had the same opportunity to grow. They all received the same amount of water and sun. They started out equal, but maybe one branch was on the side of the tree that got frostbitten blossoms and didn't get a chance to grow. The ones on the other side did grow, but one of them got half eaten by a bird, unfortunately. They all have the same kind of seed. There are bad breaks in life, but since we're all related, the cherries that didn't do well shouldn't resent the ones who did, because they will have another chance next season to grow and develop into beautiful fruit. Maybe the ones who did well this season will suffer misfortunes the next time around. Number 7, selfishness compared to a hand in a glove. That hand wants to be warm and comfortable itself, but doesn't really want to touch others with its bare skin. It doesn't care if the other hand is warm or not. It can't because of the shape of the hands and won't share its glove with the other one. It can touch things that would be too hot or cold for the other hand and not be affected. In other words, it has insulated itself from any contact with anything that could injure it or even make it uncomfortable, hurt its feelings. But in the end, that hand, having done the same things the ungloved hand has done, is not going to learn the difference between right and wrong, because it hasn't learned to discriminate between good and bad. It will go through life and not gain anything. 7 winning virtues compared to familiar things. Number 1, love compared to an apple. An apple is grown on a tree with roots deep in the ground. It has to reach a certain age. It has to mature before it can bear fruit. It must be matured and cared for and kept free of harmful parasites and diseases. It must go through a blossoming stage and be pollinated, and then slowly firm and ripen into a full-grown apple. The full-grown apple has a beautiful color and a firm, smooth skin. When eaten, the flesh is sweet and juicy to the taste. It has a core at the center with seeds and a stem, which makes it easier to hold, and a fairly flat base to rest on. Number 2, kindness compared to a bell. A bell can come in many different sizes and shapes and colors. It can have many different sounds. To be a bell, it has to be heard and felt. To be activated, it must come from something inside. It can be set in motion from a distance by pulling on a rope, or close up by holding it in your hand. A bell can also be set in motion by wearing it somewhere on your body, so that when you move and walk, you do so with the bell always in motion. You can feel the vibrations of the bell as they stir the ethers around them with their sound waves. Some bells are large and give out a deep, loud gong, and others are small and delicate and issue forth a soft tinkle. But all are heard and felt and are beautiful in their own way. Number 3, diplomacy compared to a stairway. You climb a stairway one step at a time. You can pause for as long as you need between steps, and you're always given a railing to hold on to between each step. Stairs not only move up, but also forward. They have a firm construction, and they have a place to start to take the first step. This is at the spot where you are standing. There is no upper limit to the stairs. You can climb as high as you like or need. Number 4, freedom compared to a train and track. A track is built through lots of hard work. It's built over high mountains, cold, desolate prairies, hot, dry deserts, and so on. It is usually a straight, narrow track with a good roadbed. The train on this track has to be activated by an engine. This engine can be just big enough to carry one car, or it can be powerful enough to carry many cars. There is a network of train tracks through most of the world. Number 5, impersonality compared to a hammer. A hammer can be used in many different ways. It can pound a nail in to hold something together, or the claw end can be used to tear something out so it can be put back together right. It is made out of a very strong material. If something doesn't fit just right, the hammer can also be used to give little nudges by tapping on different sides to make it fit. But a hammer is always an extension of an arm. Think about this. There is always a handle separating the hand from the part doing the work, usually a warm wooden handle. Number 6, compassion compared to a string of pearls. A pearl is said to be made over a long period of time as tears of the oyster. It is caused by irritation to the inside of the body. It must be taken out of the body and used for the full beauty of the pearl to be seen. No one knows it's there if it's kept hidden inside the shell. Pearls have many different shades and sizes, but all are beautiful and feel warm and vibrant when held in the hand. Pearls are used in a string joined together with a hook. The pearls near the clasp are usually smaller and gradually grow larger towards the center of the circle. These circles or necklaces are worn around the throat, used to speak. Sometimes they are worn on the ears, used to hear. Some eyeglasses even have pearls embedded, used to see. And there are pins worn over the heart, used to feel. Number 7, truth compared to a book. A book of truth is bound in durable covering to protect it. It has many pages full of truth to be read and studied by all people. The best way found so far to get spiritual teachings to the masses is through the use of books. The truth can be translated into many different languages. 7 areas of concern compared to familiar things. Number 1, greed compared to a toad. Toads jump all over, sticking their tongues out and catching anything that comes near them. It is ugly. It is a carryover from the days of the caveman when this attitude was necessary to survive. Both greed and selfishness were necessary for survival then, but not now, because we have evolved past this stage. Anyone still employing these attitudes is stopping their evolution. They're stuck in caveman days and need to be enlightened. But first they have to be made to admit these are their attitudes before they will attempt to change them. Number 2, fickle compared to a chameleon. Chameleons change the color of their skin to match the environment. To be fickle is to be childish, a combination of immaturity and fear. Fear of losing control of oneself by caring too much for others, and immature and not wanting to accept the responsibility that commitment would bring. It is not wanting to have to make a decision. Number 3, fears compared to a hippopotamus. Fear is like seeing a huge hippopotamus with ferocious-looking teeth coming towards us. When it gets to us, it will not harm us, but we have built up in our minds that all big things and unknown things are to be feared. Number 4, hypocrisy compared to a pumpkin. A pumpkin is big and fat. It can grow to enormous size. In the center are a lot of seeds and stringy stuff all clinging together. These false insides must all be pulled out to get at the good, real insides of the pumpkin, which is next to the outer skin and is good. Pumpkins are used to mock others at Halloween. They are carved in grotesque faces, and a candle is lit inside so that ugly face shines in the night. They eventually rot into a stinking mess. Number 5, indifference compared to hummingbirds. Hummingbirds hover and watch but do not help. They care only if they eat and will jealously guard their own source of food. They are not loyal to one household. If the feeder isn't kept filled, they will leave and make their home elsewhere. They have a sharp beak that hurts. They flit about and they migrate with the different seasons. They make loud noises and can't be pinned down. Number 6, loneliness compared to a ship in a bottle. A ship in a bottle is isolated. It's out of its natural habitat. It's imprisoned in something which has to be shattered to gain release. It usually takes a hard blow to break the bottle and has to be done carefully to keep from damaging the vessel inside the bottle. It took a long time to develop. In other words, loneliness has been with the vessel for a long while. It needs more air to breathe and more contact with the outside world. In fact, it is leading a useless life in the bottle, helping no one. It certainly can't grow any bigger and can't expand its horizons until the bottle is broken. Number 7, stubbornness compared to concrete. Stubbornness is pride that has become hardened as though in concrete. It needs a terrific blow to shatter it. It is ingrained very firmly in the personality, so if it is still present, it shows that this person is still expressing through his personality.